their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? My name is Chris McLean. This is Hater Radio. I'm with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you?
I'm doing really good.
All right, so this is week 13. You know, it's getting to the end here, so we're like really trying to we're gonna figure everything out as the next 2 weeks unveil itself, and we'll know who's gonna make one, the conference championship games, and two, the playoffs. So let's jump into it. Ian, let's talk about the SEC situation. Can you give me a breakdown of the SEC scenarios of what's going to happen in these conference championship games?
Yeah, so six teams, believe it or not, are still at play, but likely things will shake out with the next couple of weeks. Texas obviously still plays Texas A&M, who is still in the hunt. But the 6 teams, first of all, that are still mathematically in the race are Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Bama, and Ole Miss. And we've got 2-3 weeks left of conference play.
2
weeks
this
of conference
week and
play.
next week, and that's it. So yeah, week 14 is next week, and that's it.
Yeah, so the path likely, believe it or not, Bama has the most likely chance to make it to the conference championship. Their last 2 games are Oklahoma and Auburn. And that one seems well in hand that Alabama can take care of business. And they do have to go to Norman this week. And then they have to play Auburn in Tuscaloosa. But if they take care of business, they're right back in Atlanta. If Texas and A&M take care of business, then they're in the winner goes to the conference championship to be the regular season finale. Texas plays Kentucky, and A&M is playing Auburn as well this next game. So those 2 games, for me, I know we have 6, but I feel like those 3 are the most likely candidates because I have a good idea that Texas is going to take care of Kentucky. And A&M, it is in Auburn, but I feel like A&M's got a good chance. If they win those 2, then everybody else is mathematically eliminated.
Okay, so if A&M and Texas win, then it's Texas A&M winner goes to the SEC championship game. Who would be the second place team that would represent the SEC?
Alabama.
Okay, all right. So that's
all Alabama has to do is win out. If Alabama wins out, which is very likely, they're in. Now, if they lose to either of these teams lose this week, or say Alabama loses the week after, if they drop that Iron Bowl game, then it's still in play for Georgia and Ole Miss and Tennessee, but it's very, very thin because they would need Ole Miss has the tiebreaker on Georgia, and Tennessee lost that tiebreaker, so Georgia would need to lose 2. This is literally the most math I have done in probably 6 years. So may not be totally accurate, but from when I was doing it last night, that's what it is looking like right now. If Texas and Texas A&M or Alabama don't take care of business, then we're looking very possibly at Georgia falling up into it, and or if Texas and Texas A&M lose their last 2, Ole Miss gets in.
Yeah, and I think the most likely scenario, which you laid it out, which we just talked about, is the fact that Alabama wins out, and then it's the winner of Texas A&M. It seems most likely that's what it's going to be. I know there's obviously plenty of scenarios, and I'll go through some of the situations that we have, because there's even for the Big Ten, where there's only 4 teams left really to have a shot, there's 10 scenarios there that could and they're all various of which team goes, and depending on common opponent playoff win percentage and all kinds of other things. And so it's quite ridiculous. But no, I still feel like right now Alabama should win those games. They should beat Oklahoma, and they should beat Auburn. Those are two very mediocre teams, and Alabama is definitely not mediocre. I mean, they did lose to Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt I think is better than both of those teams right now. And then with Texas and Texas A&M, Texas has let's see, Texas has who they have.
Texas plays Kentucky.
Texas has Kentucky, and then A&M has Auburn. So they should win those games. I know Kentucky might give Texas a little bit of a fight, but it's in Austin, so I believe Texas should take care of business. All right, let's jump into Big 12. So right now, BYU controls their own destiny. If they win out, they will be in no matter what. So they just need to keep winning. They have Arizona State, which is tough, and then I can't remember their other game after this, but if they just win out, they'll get in. If they do lose one of their games, they will need help. They need Arizona State to lose because they would more than likely probably lose their game to Arizona State. So they would need Arizona State to lose to Arizona the following week. Colorado, similar situation to BYU, win and they're in. If they lose to Kansas, they need Arizona State and Iowa State to lose at least once, or have BYU to lose their last two. So it gets kind of hairy with Colorado if they do drop a game, which between the Kansas and Oklahoma State game, there is a good possibility of Kansas, and we'll talk about that later. Arizona State, they mainly control their own destiny, largely because they play BYU this week, which gives them an opportunity to cement themselves. If Arizona State, Colorado, and Iowa State win out, and BYU loses the rest of their games, there would be a tiebreaker between Arizona State and Iowa State, and I believe Colorado would get in. And then the tiebreaker would be hinging on win percentage of common opponents, and that has not yet been determined. So the rest of the games will determine that. So there's that for Arizona State. For Iowa State, they need to win both games and hope that BYU and Colorado drop one of their last two. So kind of a wing and a prayer there. And then the rest of these are like really wings and prayers, because there's 5 other teams that have possibilities outside of the main 4. So Kansas State still has a shot. They would need BYU and Colorado to lose both remaining games, and Arizona State and Baylor to lose at least one game. The Iowa State game would then determine who would go on to win be the other side of the Big 12 championship game. As far as Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia, they are all alive, but they need a ton of chaos to get there. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but not probable at this juncture. It was like, I looked up the scenarios, and it was like for all 4 of those, it was going to be like a huge leap, and they're still alive, but it would take a very improbable. So Ian, you also looked at the ACC stuff. Let me hear what your thoughts on the ACC scenarios.
Yeah, I literally went from doing advanced algebra to second grade math in this one, going from SEC to ACC. So this one is much simpler. We got 3 teams in the fray: Miami, SMU, and Clemson. And it's simple as this: Clemson and Miami take care of business. They're going in. What makes this interesting is Clemson's already done with ACC play. They finished 7-1, and now they're playing. I think they have a layup game and then South Carolina. So non-conference
it's like Citadel.
Yeah,
Citadel. Yeah,
yeah, they're playing Citadel and then South Carolina.
Yeah.
So they're on the outside looking in. So it's simple as this: if Miami and SMU win their next 2 games, Miami plays Wake Forest, and then at Syracuse, which is not a give.
Yep.
And
100%.
SMU has to play at Virginia and Cal, which has been a sticky team.
Yep.
That's what we got going on. So here's the scenario here. If at SMU, just needs to win one more and they're in. They just need to win one more game and they clinch. Miami, if they lose one of their next two, Clemson leapfrogs them, and Clemson is in. And because Miami's last games are conference games. So it's for Clemson. Let me break it down here. If you're a Clemson fan, you need SMU either to lose twice, need to drop their last two games, or you need Miami to lose once to leapfrog them in. And in the event that does happen, that if SMU loses their last two, Miami loses one, then SMU is still in through the tiebreaker, but Clemson would be in. So that's what we're looking at right now. So pretty much, let me just resimplify it. SMU just needs to win one. Miami needs to win their last two, and Clemson needs one of those two teams to lose one or two games.
A game. So the only two that control their own destiny are Miami and Clemson.
The only two that control their own are SMU and Miami.
So if Miami and SMU win out, they both go?
They both go, yes. If they win out, we're looking at Miami and SMU.
So Clemson has to hope that at least one of them loses. Isn't that what you said, right?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so if Miami loses one and SMU loses, what if Miami loses one and SMU loses one? What was that scenario?
So that'll be SMU and Clemson, because Clemson would have the tie, because that means Miami would have two conference losses, and that means Clemson would leapfrog them with the one conference loss.
Yeah, and SMU only has one loss, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's do the Big Ten, and then we'll move on to the game. So Big Ten, a lot of scenarios. Like I said, there's 10 scenarios for these four teams. The four teams are Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon already clinched. So Oregon is in regardless. But depending on if they lose a game at the end here, because they only have one game left, it's against Washington. If they do lose that game, then they would be the second seed. And like, depending on that, like there's a lot of like jockeying because of that. So a lot of the scenarios are if Oregon wins out, which seems most likely because they're undefeated and they're going to be favored pretty heavily against Washington. For Ohio State, if they win out and all three of the other teams, Indiana and Penn State, that would mean Ohio State beats Indiana and Penn State. Ohio State would go because they would have the head-to-head over both of them. If Indiana wins out, then they're in. And they can get in if they beat Ohio State and lose to Purdue, which I don't think is likely because Purdue is not very good this year. Penn State has a much harder path to get in. There's a lot of scenarios where it's kind of like head-to-head, or the winning percentage of common opponents comes into play. Like I said, there are 10 scenarios. Oregon already secured the first seed, and they get really kind of screwy as you go. Because like, as I was reading all these scenarios, I was like, man, this is kind of ridiculous. Because it's like, it would be variation of like Penn State losing a game and then Ohio State winning out the rest of them, and Indiana winning one game and then losing one game. And then like, so it just gets kind of really, I think the Big Ten situation is going to settle itself after this week. I think we'll know for sure more coming into Sunday, because there's just kind of multitude of situations with all four of these teams. And even though, yes, Oregon is secured, there's still depends on if they win out as well, and the rest, depending on the rest of the teams as well. So it is very murky for them. And so we really won't know until the last game last week. But at least after this week, we should have a good understanding, and there should be a lot less scenarios to be able to determine who is going to be representative in Indiana or Indianapolis. Okay, that is the scenarios. We wanted to do that because obviously a lot is going on. The playoff rankings just got released last night, and there's a lot of chaos. I'm actually loving this because I've been seeing a lot of tweets from like random accounts that I don't even follow that are getting a ton of reactions and views because of the fact that more teams are eligible and have a possibility of getting in the playoffs. So there's more excitement for more teams the rest of this year. We never have had this, since the playoff. It has only been 4 to maybe 6 teams that had a legitimate shot at getting in. Even before that, it was technically only like 2 or 3 teams. Now it is literally like the entire top 25, and if you win out the rest of your games, which some of them include conference championship games, they have a good shot of getting in. So it has been amazing to see this. I have wanted this forever. And, to see it come to fruition and then to possibly get home playoff games. I mean, this is a dream come true, and it really is amazing. I'm loving every second of this. But let's jump into week 13 because we have some games to talk about, and that's what we do the most here on this show. Okay, week 13, the big daddy of them all, the number 2 versus number 5. This is a huge matchup. This is Indiana, Ohio State. I want to hear your thoughts first, Ian.
So this game, it has all the billings. We got a kind of David and Goliath situation here. Indiana having no doubt the best season they have had in maybe the past century of their program. They are 10-0 under first-year coach Curt Cignetti, and they have just been dominating in all facets of the game. They have the 3rd best defense, and I think it's the 23rd best passing offense. Bit of a run and gun type offense that they are running with Cignetti. And it's simple as this. It's, as we mentioned, it is a de facto division championship game. Whoever wins this, they are more than likely going to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And it's in Columbus, and clearly Indiana easily biggest game of the year and toughest game of the year. A lot has been made about their schedule and all that. And I've even said stuff at the beginning of the year with their schedule that they have been blowing teams out, maybe not tough, high quality opponents. With that, they're coming off a bye. They came off a big emotional win against Michigan, beating them for the first time in years. And now they're looking to do it again against Ohio State. Now it is in Columbus. And again, doing the homework here. The last time Indiana has beaten Ohio State in general was 1988. To put that in perspective, Wayne Gretzky was just traded to the LA Kings.
Yeah.
That's how long ago it was.
That's crazy.
And even further, the year before was the last time they won in Columbus in 1987. So there's a lot of history going on here. This is an incredible streak Ohio State has put on Indiana. And, man, it's really tough for me to say because I feel like Indiana, they've really risen up to the challenge in a lot of these games. I know a lot of people have been doubting them, and they still have their doubters. But when it came push to shove, they showed up and showed out. I feel like, though, when it's going to boil down to is Ohio State still has the best defense in the Big Ten and the second best in the country. And it is much more versatile than Michigan's was. And not only that, mistakes, Ohio State can capitalize on with that offense. Indiana, the game plan is going to be field position. If they can keep Ohio State on their side of the 50 throughout most of the game, they'll be okay. But they have to limit turnovers and limit penalties. I feel like, though, Indiana's got to play better than perfect, and I feel like Ohio State, that plays in Ohio State's hands. If I had to make a pick, I'm going to make the pick here. I think Ohio State continues the streak. I think they win a really close one because I know Indiana is going to be doing everything and throwing the kitchen sink at them. But I'm going to go with the Buckeyes winning a close one. I'll go with a 33-28 win in a shootout.
I don't know what to pick in this game because I'm torn. I've really liked Cignetti all year and what he's done. I like Rourke. I like a lot of the playmakers that Indiana has. Their defense is solid enough to keep them in this game, which I think that's going to be the case. I think this game might be a low-scoring game, similar to like the Nebraska game. And, Indiana had a low-scoring game against Michigan as well when they went up against a good defense. So I think if Rourke can eliminate some of the mistakes that he's had, in that Michigan game, he threw a very bad pick really close to their end zone, and it set up a score for Michigan relatively easily. If he can avoid something like that, I think that keeps them in this game. I mean, I want to pick Indiana. I really do. And I feel like they can probably win this game. I feel like they're good enough to win it. And I don't necessarily agree that they have to play perfect. I think if they just play their game, which they've played all year for the most part, except probably that second half against Michigan, I feel like they're better than most teams in the country because of that, because they can play against anybody. This is tough. I guess I'm going to go with Ohio State, but I'm going to say it's going to be like a 24-20 game, and like maybe they like hit a late field goal to go up 4 points, and then Indiana is going to like have to drive to see if they can score a touchdown, and they just don't somehow, and that's how the game ends. Okay, Wake Forest, Miami. We'll do this one quick. Miami, after that loss to Georgia Tech, I know we talked about it with the Syracuse game, and that's next week, but this Wake Forest team is not like just going to stand down, and it's not like they're going to come into this game and just let them take advantage of them. But this is it's in Miami. Miami's looking to rebound. Wake Forest is 4-6, and I don't know. I just don't see results on here that are too promising for Wake Forest. I mean, their last win was against Stanford. They beat UConn. They got smoked by Clemson. They barely beat NC State, who's been beaten by like everybody. They lost to Louisiana. They lost to Virginia. Got smoked by Ole Miss. There's just not a lot of results on here that are really promising for this Wake Forest team. I think Wake Forest is going to lose pretty badly. I'd say Miami wins like 38 to like probably 14. What do you got, Ian?
Well, I'll just break it down in simple terms. Miami has the best offense in the ACC. Wake Forest has the worst defense in the ACC. Canes win big, 45-17.
Yeah, this is a simple one. We don't need to spend too much time on this one. I just thought I'd mention it because if they did lose this game, they would be out of the playoff contention and ACC as well. So just kind of important to mention it since we're getting down to the end. All right, moving on to one of the teams we cover, Florida, going up against Ole Miss. Now, last week when we found out that Lagway was going to play, I got super pumped, and we didn't know that going into our Wednesday predictions. So that probably affected how we predicted. I don't even remember if I predicted a win. I don't think I did. Did you predict a win for Florida?
I did not predict a win.
Yeah, I didn't think I did either. So, and it was largely because we didn't think DJ was going to play. DJ played, and he played magnificently. And, I think he's going to do the same here. The problem here is Ole Miss, their D-line is way better than LSU's. And also Ole Miss is way more of a machine on offense than LSU is right now. And I feel like Ole Miss can take advantage of Florida a little bit better. There were so many third downs that LSU converted that I think Ole Miss will not only convert those, but then make like big explosive plays. And I think that's what really was the difference in the game, because I rewatched the LSU game the last 2 days and noticed that there was very little explosive plays for LSU. I think there was like 3 total over 20 yards. So Florida kept them in check for the most part. And that's why they didn't really score more than 1 touchdown. But I don't think Ole Miss is going to be the same. I think Ole Miss is going to have plenty of those. Plus the fact that Florida is missing Jason Marshall and Devin Moore. As of right now, Devin Moore is still out, but Jason Marshall's out for the rest of the year. But Devin Moore, I don't know about till game time probably. But they played the same 4 core secondary members that whole game. It was Jordan Castell, Bryce Thornton, Bridges, and Dejon Johnson. So expect that might be the same. I think that's a good possibility. Maybe Pup Howard will be back. I don't know for sure as of right now. So that would be a huge benefit because Pup is a better in coverage on the linebackers and maybe inside wide receivers. So we'll see there on defense. But I don't expect Florida to win this game. I want them to because, like, it would be huge for momentum. It would be huge for recruiting, huge for, you know, a lot of things because then they have the potential. One, it would get bowl eligibility. But two, if they win, they have potential of getting 7-5. And if they win their bowl game, it would be 8-5, which I don't think anybody would have thought coming into after the Texas game at 4-5 that they had a possibility of going to 8-5, especially if you had told us that at the beginning of the season, when like thinking about season predictions, if they had gotten to the Texas game 4-5, people would have been like, oh, that season's over and Billy was fired because obviously the rest of the half of the season was much more difficult. But here we are. They have a really good possibility of it. But again, this Ole Miss team is really good. They're definitely one of the better teams in the country, one of the better teams in the conference. I expect with a lot on the line for Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin coming into town. First time Lane's been there since 2009. I expect, with him, the rumors of him taking over the job, I expect him to want to, win this game. But, Billy might be really wanting to win this game because he's been hearing the rumors about Lane Kiffin forever. But I feel like Ole Miss is going to win. I'm going to say Ole Miss wins like 31 to like probably 27. And maybe it's close. Maybe Ole Miss scores late to go ahead. Your thoughts, Ian?
So I remember I said this in the review, and I'm just going to flat out say, look, someone with Miami and Wake Forest. While Florida's defense has improved, it's still the second worst defense statistically in the SEC.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is number 1 and is an absolute machine. And we saw what happens when this defense plays a machine like Texas, like Miami. It's not the prettiest look, but this is all I am asking. Ole Miss, I'm going to call it. Ole Miss is going to win. I just want to see more fight. I'm not expecting you to win. I'm not expecting you to even make it like give them, but like make it a game. Don't just lie down and let's not have a repeat of the Texas game is all I'm asking. Let's not have a repeat of Miami, Texas, any of these A&M games. Let's not do that again. So just show up. I feel like with Lagway, the best chance Florida has is to make it a shootout, which does technically work in their favor because Ole Miss scores quickly. So if it comes down to the last possession, good chance there. But again, Ole Miss's defense is way better than what Lagway has seen with LSU or Kentucky. I feel like Ole Miss is going to win, but I think Florida, they really want to prove it to me. They'll put up some points and, make it a game into the fourth quarter. But I'm going to go with the Rebels in this one. I'll go with let's do like 37-24 Ole Miss. The score sounds worse than I act, but like late scores.
A late score, yeah. Two things that I wanted to say before we move on. One, it's a noon kick, which I hate noon kicks, especially when this is like a big time game. I don't know why they would make this a noon kick, but whatever. It is what it is. I just hate that because the energy in these noon kicks really suck as far as like the rest of the fans and like getting kids up for the game. It's kind of like, because they have to get up at like 6, 7 in the morning and start really early. On these later kicks, they can kind of go through their day and get ready for the game. But these early kicks are really kind of a pain in the butt. And then plus it's like with tailgating, I know people still drink and will get in the mood for the game, but it's still, I don't know. It's like sometimes these games that like early on, the fans aren't there or their energy isn't there. So it's just kind of rough that way. But last thing I wanted to say about Lagway. Now, all that, what we both said, yes, definitely we need to heed that advice. But I will say the one factor that has made me like move in the column of being more optimistic about things is the belief factor that not only DJ Lagway has in himself, which he obviously has it, he believes, and that is great because that is infected everyone else around him. It's infectious, and it's gotten his offense to believe, his receivers, his O-line. You know, his O-line now knows, oh, if DJ can step up, I don't have to block as long. I just have to hold on for a second or two, and then he'll get the release off because he's really quick with his release. And then also the defense starts to believe. It's like, oh, if we make a few plays here or there, we can make the difference and get the ball back to DJ, and he can score really quick, and we can win. Those are huge factors. And it also bleeds into the coaching. You know, if coaching believes that you can win these games, they're going to prepare harder. They're going to put a better effort because they know that they actually have a shot. That Texas game is a huge microcosm of what it's like, you know, Texas game and then LSU, the comparison, the juxtaposition between the two, where it's like Texas, they had no hope and it looked like it from every ounce of the team. Like nobody felt like they had a shot. No fans did. Nobody did. But this LSU game, the second that we heard DJ was coming back, I knew it. I just felt it. I could feel the difference in just my own feeling about the team. And then also you could see it on social media. People were getting hyped about it. And obviously after the game as well. So he gives the team a huge advantage that otherwise they don't have. And, you know, as much as it's not like his numbers aren't amazing so far as statistical, like normal stat sheet look, but obviously the deep ball is where it like really like stands out. Like I think he's top 5 in 20 plus yard passage, like completion percentage in the country. So obviously DJ is very good and gives you that belief, and it goes a long way. And I think that might be the difference the rest of the year. So let's move on to SMU, Virginia. This Virginia team got smoked last week to Notre Dame. They benched their quarterback. SMU with their offense, they should be able to put up enough points, but the game is in Virginia. I don't know. I'm going to say SMU pulls this one off just because I have faith that their offense will travel and their defense does good enough to keep Virginia in check. I mean, Virginia, they beat Pitt, so it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I don't know. I feel like SMU should win this game pretty easily, and especially with everything on the line right now. Like they have a ton at play, and Virginia is just really playing to get out of the season because they're 5-5 right now. I mean, they're playing for bowl eligibility, but I still feel like SMU has a lot more on the line, and I think they'll be ready to play. I like Jennings a lot. I like their playmakers. I'm going to say SMU wins like probably 34-21. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think SMU's offense will travel. And I mean, this is a Virginia team that's been, blown out by Clemson, and then they got blown out by North Carolina, which was a really bad loss. So I just don't see them keeping up with SMU. If they make it a defensive game like they did with Pitt and they kept it close with Louisville, even though they lost 24-20, they might have a chance, but I don't see them holding them to less than 24 points. So I'm going to go with SMU winning. Let's do 34-17.
Nice. Okay. Next game we have is Kentucky, Texas. This Kentucky team is just kind of like wilted on the vine. They had that Ole Miss win in the beginning of the year, and they competed against Georgia pretty well. And then they got smoked by Florida, and then they just kind of, fell off from there. Texas, on the other hand, only really has that loss to Georgia. And, they otherwise have played pretty well. The Arkansas game was tough, but, I think they that was a pretty typical like road SEC win. You know, you're not going to win those by a ton a lot of times. You just have to survive those. You know, and Kentucky's lost to Tennessee, Auburn. You know, they've had a really rough go at it. They beat Murray State last week, but lost to Vanderbilt. Yeah, it's just been they just can't score enough. You know, outside those games against the Cupcakes, they haven't scored more than 20 points all year. So I don't think they're going to score more than 20 against Texas. Texas has a really good defense. And I think Quinn Ewers will probably have a big game. You know, I think he can pick apart this Kentucky defense, which, you know, Lagway did as well. And I think Texas is going to put up like 35, 38 points. I'm going to say Texas wins 38 to like 13. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, and with this Kentucky team, like you mentioned, I mean, they haven't won a conference game since that Ole Miss win. And the one thing is, yes, the defense has been solid when it shows up. They gave up a lot to Florida, and then, you know, they were down by 10 to Tennessee, gave up over 28, and they lost to Auburn by 2 possessions, which is, you know, not good. The offense has really been struggling. Put this in perspective. Texas this season, whether it was Manning or Ewers, each quarterback that started the game threw less than 200 yards only twice this season.
Yeah.
Vandergriff has only thrown more than 200 yards once this season.
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with here. And I feel like Kentucky's defense, they might put up a fight, but I feel like eventually they'll wear them down. I'm going to go Texas winning. It's in Austin. So I'll go Longhorns with a 35-16 win.
Okay, moving on to Penn State, Minnesota. We don't have to do this one very long. I know Penn State's probably going to win. This is like the least likely upset of the week, probably. I think that because they still have a lot to play for, regardless of what happens in the other games, that they have nothing to be able to sway those games. I think Penn State will take care of their business. I think they have the next 2 games to win out, and they will. I think it's Minnesota and then Maryland, and that they should easily win this game. You know, Minnesota, you know, yeah, they beat USC, but outside of that, they've really kind of struggled all year. And, you know, well, actually, they're 6-4. I thought they were worse off. No, I don't know what to, you know, I still think Penn State's way better than this team. You know, Minnesota did beat Illinois, which is surprising, but they lost to Rutgers. And who else did they lose to? They barely beat UCLA. They did.
I know they lost to North Carolina to start the year, which is
they lost to North Carolina. They beat Maryland pretty well. And then I think they lost to
Iowa, Michigan
and Iowa.
Yeah.
And they beat like some of the others. So they like have 2 real soft ones in Rhode Island and Nevada, which, you know, those are easy ones. So, yeah, I still stand by it. I feel like Minnesota is just one of those teams that, you know, looking at their score totals, they never scored more than like 27 all year outside of the Cupcake games and the Maryland game. So I don't think they're going to score more than like 25 or 26. And I think Penn State can score at least, you know, 31. So I'm going to say 31 to like 22. What do you got?
Yeah, you beat me to that because I was going to say Penn State, all they have to do is literally score more than 25 points because Minnesota has not scored more than 24 this season against. They've only done it to one Division I team. The only other, they've scored 48 against Maryland, and then they scored 40 plus on Rhode Island. Yeah. So they've only done it to one Division I team. I'm not thinking they're going to do it again against Penn State. So if Penn State is in the 30-point range, they're going to win it. I'm going to go Nittany Lions winning. Let's do 31-14.
Nice. Okay. Huge game. Probably this might be outside of the Indiana-Ohio State game and the Army-Notre Dame game. This might be the biggest game of the day. BYU, Arizona State, ton on a line. 8-2 Arizona State, 9-1 BYU. You know, both have a real strong possibility of getting to the Big 12 championship game. The game is in Tempe. I want to hear your thoughts before I go. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's in Tempe, BYU, and Arizona State having a really good resurgence this year. They're the one loss they had against Cincinnati was a real tough one in Cincinnati, and then same with Texas Tech at the beginning of the year. But BYU, man, that Kansas loss really kind of threw a monkey wrench. The thing is to not waver. If you're BYU here, you took a bad loss, but you still have to play and play up to these games. It's just a matter of which BYU team are we going to get. Now, the interesting thing is that BYU offensively has not been that like earth shattering. They're kind of near the bottom of the Big 12, but defensively they've been monsters. They've really done a good job holding teams, or at least coming up with the big plays. They did give up over 30 against Oklahoma State, but I think it's going to be who plays whose game. Arizona State's going to need to kind of play this as a running gun type of game. And I think they can, but one possession games, I feel like for example, the UCF game, in that situation they were in, they could win that against a team like UCF. If it comes down to a close game and you have maybe 1-2 possessions left, you have to capitalize because you will not get another chance with BYU. I think, oh man, this is tough.
It's a tough one.
I feel like with, I'm going to go defense wins championships motto. I think BYU gets enough stops on the Sun Devils. And I think BYU gets a really big win. I don't think it's going to be easy, and this might be a game where they're stuck in the mud, but I think BYU can get it done. So I'm going to go Cougars winning. Let's do 27-21.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. I love this BYU team. I have liked them all year. I think like offensively, their numbers are not great, but I think they play complementary football with their defense and their special teams to really be a complete team, which I think all three phases of the game out of any team I've seen all year, I feel like they are more complete than any other team. Yes, other teams might have a better offense or a better defense, but I don't think the level of play, like it's like when you're choosing a team on NCAA 25 or, the games where it would show the level of those teams, all of them vary to team, but like, for BYU, it's all about the same because they all do very well and they're all very solid in their game. They score so many non-offensive touchdowns, and that's been the difference in the year so far, where the game with Kansas State, they blew out Kansas State because they were to get so many. They had a punt return, and I believe they had either a fumble or interception return for a touchdown. Those things matters in games like this, where Sam Leavitt, the redshirt freshman quarterback for Arizona State, he has been very good the last couple of weeks, last 3 weeks. He hasn't thrown an interception. And before that, only one apiece during those two other games in that 5-game stretch. But if you go back the rest of the year, he has a couple more. So if they can get to Sam Leavitt and force him to make mistakes, maybe it goes their way. Maybe they can actually make a difference here, especially because that defense is so strong. They kept Kansas in check for the most part, and Kansas has scored a lot of points on a lot of really good teams. They smoked Iowa State for the most part, and Kansas also had a really good game against Arizona State as well. They scored 31, even though Arizona State won that game. So I feel like BYU has all three phases of the game to win this game. I'm going to say like a 24-20 game, probably similar to the Utah game and even similar to the Kansas game. So moving on to another big game. Speaking of Kansas, Colorado, Kansas. Ian, I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, this is the definition of a trap game. Because Kansas riding high, they had a big win, obviously, against BYU. That surprised everybody, including myself. And they had they upset Iowa State the week before. So they're having a trend of upsetting these big teams. And now going into Kansas, I think this one being played
Arrowhead.
It's played in Kansas City. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Interesting. That actually makes sense. Yeah, for Colorado, this is the definition of, like I said, a trap game, because Kansas is riding high and they have to make sure they stay focused, stay on the radar. The one thing I will give Colorado that they've done impressively well this year is that they have maintained course. We saw last year there was a lot of distractions. Obviously, it came with the program, all that, and there still are. But Deion Sanders has done a good job to be like, look, just focus on winning the game. like let's just worry about that. You don't have it like it was last year where like Shedeur Sanders was promoting stuff at halftime. We're not getting any of that. They're just going in there, winning the game, and then they can have the publicity afterwards. If they can do that, they can focus on, the goal in hand. I feel like they can win this. The key is not making this a close game. If this is a close game, that's exactly where Kansas wants you. Kansas has played close to a lot of teams. They played close to Arizona State, barely lost. Played close to Kansas State, barely lost. They played close with Iowa State, won. Played close with BYU, won. So they're perfect in that type of scenario. Colorado has to jump out early, not keep Kansas in the game. Other thing I wanted to mention, this is the first time they have played since 2010, the last year of the original Big 12. That was when Colorado moved to the Pac-12 a year later. Colorado has not beaten Kansas in Kansas since 2004. And for my second hockey analogy here, Gary Bettman just announced the first NHL lockout in that time in 2004. So,
well, no, there was another lockout in
95.
Yes,
there was 95. Okay, first full season lockout.
Yes,
2004. You tell any hockey fan like myself, you say lockout, you think 2004, 2005, and you get PTSD from that.
Yeah, especially because the Lightning had all their team back, and if they would have played that year, they more than likely would have won the cup again. So we basically got a cup stolen from us. So this is my upset game. This is probably going to be the most important upset of the year if it does happen, because if it does happen, what is that line? What is in line for Colorado right here? They have a shot at getting to the Big 12 championship game in Arlington. And then if they lose it, they may lose that, and they may lose a potential college football playoff spot. So there is a lot on the line for Colorado here. And Kansas, like you said, has played a ton of close games. They barely lost to West Virginia. They barely lost to UNLV. They barely lost to Illinois. They barely lost to Arizona State. They barely lost to Kansas. I mean, most of their losses are 6 points or less. The only one that they lost more than 6 points, the only one was the TCU game where they lost by 11. Every other game they've lost by 6 points or less, and so that's 5 games. So they have been in these games. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. Come the last 2 weeks where they beat a really good Iowa State team and a really good BYU team. And they smoked Iowa State, and they played really well against BYU. So this Kansas team is ready to win this game. And I will counter with just add to what I'm positing here. Colorado, yes, they are 8-2 at this point. But if you look at who they have played basically the bottom half of the Big 12. They have not played Iowa State. They have not played BYU, and they have not played Arizona State. They avoided all 3 of those teams. They did play Kansas State, and they lost to them. Now, the combined record of the teams that they've played in the Big 12 so far is 36-34. And the last 2 teams that they played, Kansas and Oklahoma State, their combined record with them included in that total is 43-47. So I know that people want to look at Colorado and be like, yes, they have done very well on offense. Their defense has done okay because they haven't played the better offenses in the Big 12, which would be BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State. So, I just feel like that this Colorado team has been fortunate on their scheduling so far this year. Now, if they do play a team like BYU or is it Arizona State or Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game, we'll see. I mean, they'll still have a shot because obviously they're good enough. And I don't feel like they're not deserving. They are definitely deserving. I just feel like they have not been challenged enough. And, this Kansas team is good enough to beat them, which I feel like Jalen Daniels will be able to do enough. And, they will be able to score enough points. They have allowed a lot of points in most of their games, Colorado. They allowed a ton of points in South Dakota State. They allowed a bunch of points to Nebraska. They allowed a bunch of points to who else? Some other teams. So, this Colorado defense is okay. It's not great, but the Colorado offense is the sticking point. They are, Travis Hunter is obviously having a great year at wide receiver. I didn't even realize his totals were that high until I double checked the other day. And then Shedeur Sanders is having a great year. A lot of their playmakers are really strong. They don't run the ball nearly at all. Like it's like a non-existent thing. They just don't even bother running the ball. They're mainly a passing team, and it works. They still beat teams. But again, I feel like this Kansas team is good enough to beat them. It is basically a home game for them in Kansas City, with a bigger crowd. So maybe there'll be a ton of people at this game. I feel like Kansas is going to win. I'm going to say real close game, probably like late score wins it. Probably Kansas gets the ball late and either kicks a field goal or scores a touchdown to go up like 3 or 4. And I'm going to say Kansas wins like 31 to like 28. What do you got, Ian? Oh, you already said yours. So let's move on. The next game we have Tulsa USF. Ian, let me hear your thoughts.
So I know I was just going on about trap games and all, but this is another trap game for USF. Tulsa is coming in not looking pretty. Lost to ECU, got blown out by UAB. Lost to Temple, got blown out by Army. Somehow snuck a shootout win against UTSA. And USF riding high that, another big win against Charlotte after responding from the loss to Navy. Byron Brown, I'm just going to say he's probably done. If he's not playing the last couple weeks, there's no point in him playing the last 2. So it's going to be down to Archie. This is why I think it's a trap game. The run game has been really impressive, and this is what it's going to take for them to keep winning these games. Because when it got stuffed against the Navy game, that offense cannot run. Here's the thing, though. In the AAC, Tulsa, while overall, in terms of overall offense, they are next to last. I think North Texas is the only one that has a worse overall offense or defense. But against the run, Tulsa is actually in the top 6 against the run in the AAC. So it might come down to either USF sticking to the run game or Archie's going to have to make some plays. And that is where it can get very scary. I feel like, though, man, if USF is still averaging maybe not 6 yards, but maybe 3-4 yards a clip, force play action, and the defense could step up again. Because Tulsa, again, offensively isn't world. They're actually, I think, only a level below USF. I think their point differential was only by 3. But it might just come down to if USF's defense can get enough stops. I think this is going to be a lot closer. I feel like USF really squeaks one out. But I think it's going to be – I actually think it's going to be close because that run game is going to be tested this week, and Archie's going to have to make some plays. So I'm going to go Bulls winning a tight one. Let's go 27-24 USF.
Yeah, Tulsa is weird because, the last 10, 15 years, they'll play teams that they have no business beating, and they'll end up randomly, knocking people off. I know UCF has had numerous times where they would travel to Oklahoma and get smoked by Tulsa, and even vice versa, the Tulsa coming to Orlando and beating them. So it's definitely not a game that they should overlook. The Rice game obviously will be an easy one, but this Tulsa game, they need to win this because it's they need to get bowl eligibility as well, just like Florida. So I think USF does get this one. I love the run game. Last week looked amazing. They ran all over Charlotte. Granted, Charlotte fired Biff Poggi, so it's not like that big of a win, but it's still beating a Power 5 team and beating them convincingly. And considering the run game is a main focus of the team, I like Kelly Joyner a lot. The kid just is an explosive runner. He will get, a huge 50-yard run almost seems like once a game now. And, it's a shame that he'll be gone after this year. And I think Naquan Wright is gone too. So some of the other guys will have to step up. But it seems like they have enough playmakers in the run game to do that. And I think they'll be fine here in this game. I think they'll probably win like a 28-20 game. And hopefully that gets bowl eligibility for them if they do win. They will if they do win. So, okay, moving on to Army Notre Dame. Man, I am so looking forward to this game. I was in Army ROTC when I was at USF in 2003, 2004 era. And, it feels like a lifetime ago, but I've always been a huge Army fan, and to see them have success with the football team has been amazing to see. They are 10-0 right now and have a really good shot at getting to the playoff if they win out. If they beat Notre Dame, they beat Navy, and and if they do win the AAC championship game, I'm most assuredly they would. I think they would go over Boise State. I think they would be the higher ranked team because they would get a win over Notre Dame, which would be a huge win. That's a huge win, winning this game. So, they're number 6 right now, I believe. And so I don't know if that's going to happen, though. So Notre Dame's offense is good enough, but I like Army's defense a ton. Like, I think that is probably the most overlooked thing of this team. Like, obviously, people know that Army can score some points and their offense moves the ball well with their option ground game. But this defense, I'm telling you what, their secondary is really good, and they're ball hawks. They get turnovers, and they're the reason why they have played as well as they have, and that they kept them their season alive when Daly got hurt. When Daly went down, they kind of struggled offensively, but their defense kept them in all those games, especially that North Texas game where they had like 2 or 3 interceptions in the end zone to thwart North Texas from scoring. I like Army a lot in this game. I would love to pick them to win this. God, I would love to see them win this game because they have not been on this level of game or magnitude for this game since like 1945 or earlier. Like, it's been a long time since Army has been a really good team and competed against Notre Dame on this type of level when Notre Dame is good as well. I know there have been some years when Notre Dame has been bad and Army might have gotten them because it's just, Notre Dame was bad, but Notre Dame is good and Army is right there with them. I just don't know if I can choose them. I'm going to say Notre Dame wins. I'm going to say Notre Dame wins like probably 24-20 game, and maybe like Notre Dame scores late to go ahead, and it's like a last second touchdown to put them ahead. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah. And this one, there's a lot of history with these two teams. Obviously, kind of one of the blue bloods or former blue bloods, the inception of college football. And even though Notre Dame and Army don't have like the play every year like Notre Dame and Navy does, still a lot of history. This is the first time they were playing since 2016. And for reference, Notre Dame, I think it's like over almost like 50 total meetings in their history. The last time Army has beaten Notre Dame was 1958. I
thought they had some like wins because I know Navy has had a couple of wins the last several years.
Yeah, Navy
I didn't realize they didn't
but
play as much either.
Yeah, they don't. It's once like every 3 years, and then it went to once every 4. Now it's like once every two times every decade.
Yeah,
but yeah, the last time Army beat Notre Dame, I looked it up, was 1958. I can't even give you a hockey reference in that one.
Yeah.
That's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And I can't even tell you the last time Army came in as the undefeated team and Notre Dame was the one-loss team or more.
Yeah.
But I feel like with this one, you're definitely right. Army's defense is definitely stellar, but I don't see them getting enough points on Notre Dame that would give them enough of a cushion to keep them at bay. But I think it might be close. It might be an old school game, but I'm going to go with the Irish. I'm going to go with let's do like a 27 to 27-19. Let's do something like that.
Yeah, and Marcus Freeman really has Notre Dame playing really good defense. And I know they lost to Northern Illinois, and that may hurt playoff chances and seeding and whatnot. But, he is a good coach, and he has that defense playing top-notch all year. I mean, they've had a couple of games where they completely destroyed Power 5 teams, and they looked – they embarrassed Power 5 teams. So let's move on real quick. Some of these Boise State, Wyoming. I'm just more looking about Ashton Jeanty, see if he does well. Do you think he goes over like 180 in this game and like 3 touchdowns?
Maybe not 3 touchdowns, but I would say again, that stat where it was like 9 guys in the box is the only time Jeanty has been held to less than 4 yards is insane. And Wyoming has like the 3rd worst defense in the Mountain West. And why Boise State needs this win to Wyoming to clinch the Mountain West conference spot. So I think Boise State gets it done. I think they wear out Wyoming as they've done all year. I'm going to go Boise State winning. Let's go 30-13.
Okay. What about Jeanty? Do you think he puts up huge numbers?
I'll say he gets 208 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Okay. Alabama, Oklahoma. What do you got?
I'm going to go Bama. I know it's in Norman, but Oklahoma's been spinning here. I mean, it's been a really if you were to tell me in 2000 when it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas were coming into the SEC, which was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Oklahoma would be the one struggling and only have 1 conference win, and Texas would be on their way to the college football playoff. I would have been like, I want to have what you're having.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to go Bama. I think Bama gets it done. Maybe Oklahoma puts a scare in them, but let's go with the Tide. I'll go with let's go 35-20.
Yeah, but at the time, Lincoln Riley was there. So it's like,
true.
You had no idea Lincoln Riley was going to leave. And I don't know, what's his face, Venables. I don't know what is going to happen. I mean, it seems likely that he may get canned because they're having a terrible year, and they weren't great last year. They were like better than his first year, but overall, it's been kind of like average, So maybe they'll give him another year to see if he turns it around, but it doesn't look good there. Okay. Texas A&M and Auburn. I feel like Texas A&M should win this game pretty easily. This Auburn team, I don't know. They're kind of just whatever to me. They've done enough to, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like some of the games that they've lost have just not like they've looked terrible. And, they lost to Vanderbilt. They did beat Kentucky. They lost to Missouri. I just don't know. And I feel like this Texas A&M team has a lot to play for, while Auburn really doesn't. I mean, what are they playing for? They have a shot at getting to bowl eligibility, but I don't think they're going to win this game. I don't think they even have a shot in this game. And they'd have to have a shot against Alabama, and I don't think they have a shot against Alabama. I know it's a home game in Auburn, but I like A&M a lot, especially Marcel Reed. I think he does a really good job of commanding that offense. He's very athletic. He can run the ball very well. And Auburn's defense is not terrible, but their offense just doesn't score enough points. I think this A&M defense can keep them in check. And I think that'll be the difference in the game. I think it's going to be like probably like a 28-17 game. What do you got, Ian?
So I definitely was thinking the same way that A&M would roll on them. But then Elko, the head coach, said,
so he was overlooking. Yes.
We're not overlook. They were like, what are you doing
Yeah.
to not overlook Auburn for the Texas game? And it's like, oh, we're all focused on Texas. I mean, Auburn.
Yeah.
And I went, and I know that's funny, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's not a good look.
No, it's
what
not.
you're doing is looking over the mountain when you have to worry about somebody running towards you down it.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
That made me like actually kind of nervous. I'm like, that's not a good sign if they're looking at Texas and not worrying about Auburn, because we've seen it when teams, focus on the next week or a big rivalry game, they lose the week before.
Yep.
So
trap game, definition of a trap game right there, Ian.
If A&M focuses on Auburn, they've got this. If they don't, Auburn's got a chance. But I think A&M takes care of business. I'll go 30-14.
Okay. Iowa State, Utah looked at the beginning of the year like this would be a good game. And Utah has been so floundering all year because Cam Rising only played like briefly throughout the year. And Isaac Wilson is like a turnover machine. I feel like Iowa State has a lot to play for here. Utah really doesn't. It's in Salt Lake, though, so this could be an interesting game. I feel like Iowa State, with Rocco Becht in that offense can score enough on this Utah defense, but I don't feel like Utah can score enough on this Iowa State defense. But there have been games where Iowa State's defense has been had. So maybe it's going to be a real close game. I'm going to say like probably like a 30-22 game. What do you got, Ian?
You're definitely right on that one, especially with Iowa State. Both of them, Utah still has a really good defense, but the offense has just been sputtering out of control. And they haven't won. Like I've been saying for years how tough of a place that is to win, but they're really letting up a lot of wins at in Salt Lake right now. And I feel like Iowa State maybe they have not as good, but a good enough defense to stop that kind of offense. And I think the offense can get enough points on. I think it'll be low scoring, but I'm going to go Iowa State winning 24-17.
Yeah, and like a couple of the games in the last like month or so, Iowa State has allowed 45 to Texas, 35 to UCF, and there was another one that like kind of stood out to me. What is it? No, that's it. So like really only those two games, and UCF kind of turned their offense around relatively recent. They were struggled most of the year, and then like since like halfway point after that Florida game, they really have kind of changed some things, and their UCF has been able to score some points. But that Kansas game, again though, the Kansas game, they have been really turning things around, so that shows there. But Iowa State last 2 weeks, Utah and Kansas State got to win these out, like we said, to get a shot at going to the Big 12 championship game. I think they beat Utah, and I think they have a really good shot of beating Kansas State. It's in Ames, so we'll see. Okay, last couple of ones we've got here. Vanderbilt, LSU. I just wanted to talk about it because I like Vanderbilt. I think they can win this game. LSU's kind of reeling. I'm going to say Vanderbilt wins like a close one, like a, I don't know, probably like a 28-24 game. What do you got?
Yeah, and this game's actually the first time Vandy's playing in Baton Rouge since 2009, and they have not won in Baton Rouge since 1951.
Oh, wow.
And the other thing to note, too, in terms of defenses, Vandy has the middle of the pack. I think it's how many teams we got now? 14? 16?
In SEC?
Yes, 14, 16.
16.
Yeah. So you have Vandy has I'm pretty sure it was the 12th best or 12th worst defense in the SEC. LSU has the 13th worst defense in the SEC. So they're right neck and neck. But I think LSU offensively has better wide receivers right now. And I think there's only so much Pavia can do with Vandy. And it's a tough place to win. If it was in Nashville, maybe. But I don't see Vandy pulling this off. I'm going to go LSU winning one. I think Vandy puts up a fight, but I'll go with like a 28-14 win for the Tigers. If Vandy pulls this off, somebody get like security on Brian Kelly because they might tear him apart in the Bayou.
Yeah, I did see someone say like losing to Florida last week was almost as bad as if they lost to Vanderbilt. And now it's like they have a legitimate shot of losing to both. So, but no, it's funny because like I know we had talked about if this game had gotten to the point where this game was going to determine who goes to the SEC championship game, that would have been hilarious. I would have loved to see Vanderbilt in the like driver's seat to go to the SEC championship game. That would have been amazing. Okay. Cincinnati, Kansas State. I think Kansas State, because they still have a lot to play for, that they will easily win this one. Cincinnati's kind of faltered since a decent start of the year. I like Kansas State a lot in this one. But I will say Kansas State has struggled. They struggled against Houston, and then they struggled last week. And so I don't know what to make of them now because, I felt like all year that they were one of the better teams, but they've just kind of like imploded basically. That Houston loss was so disappointing. Like I just did not see that coming in any way. I don't think anybody did. And now Kansas State is just clinging on to a potential Big 12 championship berth and maybe a playoff berth if they win out. But I think they do win it. I think I'm going to say they're going to win like probably like 34 to like 24. What do you got?
I think K-State needs a win, and they need it in the worst way. That Houston loss, I mean, this game is going to tell you how much that really did affect them because you can't lose 2 straight after dropping it to Houston. So one thing to note, Cincinnati does have the 5th best offense in the Big 12, but I feel like the defense with K-State wakes up. They get enough stops. The defense has actually still been playing pretty solid for K-State. It's just the offense hasn't been there. So I think the defense gets the job done, and K-State puts up enough points. I'm going to go with a 31-20 win for the Tigers or Wildcats. Sorry, I'm still thinking about LSU.
Yeah, last two real quick. USC, UCLA. I'll talk about both of these teams separately to be able to get my lights involved here. Okay, let me talk about USC first. Maivia should put up a decent game. He looks like he's got command of the offense. He had a really good game against Nebraska. They were reeling all year because they were losing those 1-score games, and then they finally get one on their side. I think, again, this is going to be a close game, and I feel like USC's defense is good enough to keep them in it. Conversely, with UCLA, I feel like UCLA, that Washington loss looks worse than it actually was. That game was closer into the fourth quarter, and then Washington kind of took advantage of it and like went away with the score, but it was actually a lot closer. But UCLA defenses looked strong all year. Garbers has looked better the last 4 or 5 games. It's going to be close. I think Garbers, played well last year and won the game for them and beat USC. I think UCLA can win this game as well. I think UCLA is going to win. It's going to be close. I'm going to say probably like a 28-24 game, and maybe like USC has the ball last and USC doesn't score because Maivia just can't punch it in, and they lose another 1-score game close. But Ian, your thoughts? Yeah,
and again, both of these teams are really need rebounding. The one thing they got in common is they both need beat Nebraska, so good for them. It's interesting because offensively UCLA struggled all year, but defensively they have been improving, and USC has actually had a worse defense than UCLA this year. Again, improved, but still work to be done. It's in the Rose Bowl, and I feel like with this USC, again, I feel like with the better offense, they can get more points on the board. So I'm going to go Trojans winning this one. I think UCLA, the important thing will be is how well the defense shows up. But I feel like USC is going to try to avenge that loss last year. So they're going to get the win here. So I'm going to go Trojans winning. Let's do like a 31-23 win.
Last thing before we go. Does Florida State score more than 24 points against Charleston Southern?
Man, SoCon conference. That's a good conference, man.
Yeah, but they're like 1-9 as well.
I'll go 20. I'll go. They score 28. 28-3 win for the Florida State.
Okay. That's the show. I know it's a long one because we did the scenarios with all the clinching for conference championship games. So you can catch us at haterradio.com. I have an article about the LSU win, some other stuff on there as well. Reach us at all of our socials. We're on Threads, Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, Facebook. Just type in Hater Radio. It'll come right up. I'm going to stop saying the handles for all of them. Just keep it simple so that people will know how to get to it. But Ian, what are your handles?
My handles at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at G_Gator_G. One last thing I want to shout out to, if you're a fan of chaos, this Saturday, Western Kentucky, Liberty play each other. It is technically a 4-way tie in the Conference USA spots for the conference championship. That game would be a tiebreaker for Liberty or Western Kentucky. So if you want a precursor to the last end of the week of how this is going to be an absolute mess, watch that game.
Nice. That is the show. Enjoy these games this weekend, and we'll talk to you Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. All right, take care, y'all.